Hi everyone, I'm Aishwarya Srinivasan, Head of DevRel at Fireworks AI, and welcome to the Fireside Chat with Fireworks AI. With me, I have Benny, who is the co-founder of the company.
Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Benny. I'm one of the co-founders here at Fireworks. We've been working on large language model inference and training for about 3 years. Nice to meet you.
Well, amazing. In our first Fireside Chat, I wanted to talk to you about the DeepSeek V3.1 model that just came out. Why don't you help us understand the key differences between the previous version of V3 model and the 3.1 that just came out?
Sounds good. Yeah, this is definitely a treat. So the new DeepSeek model is a hybrid reasoning, non-reasoning model. The only thing you have to do is change the template and the model will start to do reasoning. And it will go on and on, keep talking to itself until it solves your problem. What's interesting also is that it is a incremental update from both the V3 and the R1. So it's slightly smarter than V3. It is slightly dumber than R1, but it is much more succinct and much faster at responding to you. Hopefully, it is a better experience to all the Fireworks developers since it is much faster, more responsive in general, given the intelligence.
So you're telling me that it is good at the features that it was with B3, but now it also has the ability with the dual mode reasoning that it can do what R1 could potentially do. And maybe having somewhere in between makes it a better model for a lot more use cases than V3 or R1 individually were, right? So could you maybe talk about some of the real world use cases where you think V3.1 would be a better fit compared to V3 or R1?
Compared to V3, it has now much better tool calling capabilities. That's definitely something we were looking from DeepSeek for a while. Finally got the present from them, I guess. So on different agentic benchmarks like TauBench, 2Bench, it definitely improved quite a bit. For other use cases with respect to R1, I think you're looking for much better latency improvements with very minimal quality degradation.
Okay. And with the advanced reasoning model, right? One of the issues that comes with reasoning models is the thinking tag. And at times you don't really have an explicit control of how much it can think or how long it can think. That eats up to the context window and it increases the latency for any model. So with V3.1, how do you balance the thinking capability with the optimization during inference for both efficiency of the model and the cost?
I don't think the DeepSeek people offered any clean mechanics for us to control the thinking token and thinking time. So that's how it's different from GPT-OSS. Because GPT-OSS from OpenAI does give you mechanism to say, hey, like reasoning if at low, medium, high. Here for DeepSeek, you would only be able to tell it whether you're gonna think about this problem or not think about this problem. On top of that, to use, as far as I can tell, only works with non-thinking. So there are some constraints on actually how much you can control as a developer. One thing I would recommend is if you have ways to gauge the complexity of the task before you ask the model, like a small model to say, like, is this a complicated problem or not? Before asking DeepSeek to reason about things, it may save you quite some money on the output tokens.
So now that you brought up GPT-OSS, tell us more about how does the 3.1 compare with GPT-OSS or with Kimi or with Quen model that just came out?
That's a lot of model to compare with. Let me try. So GPT-OSS compare with, I'm mostly looking for 120B. Compare with the new DeepSeek 3.1, it's a much smaller model. GPT-OSS technically can fit even onto one H100. Right? Because you have all these quantization techniques provided by OpenAI. Whereas for DeepSeek, you will need a GPU, give or take, of H200. Compared with Kimi, it is definitely a smaller model. Kimi is like 1 terabyte. At the same time, we do see a lot of good community engagement with Kimi. It seems to be it has that big model smell from a lot of people. It's like the first time people smelled it was with GPT 4.5. Now they're smelling it again with Kimi. There's some magic to big models. I feel like it's very hard to articulate. Maybe one day we'll figure out a way to articulate what people mean by big models now. But yeah, compared it with GPT-OSS, GPT-OSS definitely doesn't have the big model smell. It's like a very, very good reasoning model for math and all different difficult tasks. And then you have the 3.1 that is more like a hybrid, and then Kimi that gives you the big model spell. Now, Qwen is a little bit different because they took a different approach, right? They have a big model for coding and a big instruct model and a big reasoning model. They started originally doing like Qwen 3 with hybrid reasoning, non-reasoning. I guess this time around they have the separate model and the benchmarks will all seem much higher for the separate model. So maybe it is very, very difficult engineering task to have hybrid thinking model. I don't know exactly what's going on with these model developers planning process. But yeah, like Qwen seems to have a lot of success just having separate models, and maybe that's the way to go. Maybe that's not the way to go. But yeah, Qwen have everything you ask for. Just pick one. And then if you don't want to pick Qwen, you can pick across all these different models on Fireworks.
So it's been a week since 3.1 was launched. How do you say is the traction for the model amongst developers?
Oh, it's been great, yeah. Especially the fact that it has reasoning and non-reasoning definitely helps to consolidate a bunch of traffic onto one model and save you the headache of picking which one is best for which task.
That makes a lot of sense. So Benny, tell us a little bit more about best practices or tips that a developer should keep in mind when they are trying out 3.1 or swapping a previous model with 3.1.
So yeah, you should definitely consider trying out your tool calling workload on 3.1. It is way better at tool calling compared to DeepSeek V3. I think DeepSeek V3 sort of burned a bunch of developers when they kind of offer tool calling, but not really. This model is way better at tool calling. One thing to look out for is that I don't have a great word for it, but it is a very nerdy model. Okay. I don't know what kind of post-production we can do to share some screenshots here.
We can, yeah.
Specifically, when I was watching the output of this model for Taobench, because in Taobench, there's a tool description where it says like, ask for user email. For example at example.com. The model is great, don't get me wrong. Like it gets a lot of things right. But every time, instead of asking for user email, it would just fill in example at example.com, get an error, and then it's like, oh, wait, I need to ask for user email. Hey, what's your email? So it is a very literal model. It will do exactly what it tells you to do, including in the tool description. So just be very, very straightforward with your tool description, very, 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 very literal, and assume the model will just take your word for it. Even if it's example at example.com, it will actually try it. And yeah, but other than that, like the model is able to correct its own mistakes. It's a fantastic model for multi-turn tool call. It just gets a lot of things right.
So Benny, it looks like what you're saying is the model is actually very good at instruction following. A lot of times the issue that happens with model system prompts is that even though there is one, it still doesn't follow it every single time. So what you're saying is that the model is really good at system prompts.
A little bit too good, yes.
Okay.
So maybe you've been not as careful with how you write your system prompt and just assume the model gets it. It gets that it's example.example.com. But this time the model will actually try to follow your instructions. So be very, very careful, very pedantic with your system prompt going forward.
Well, all of us have been also waiting for DeepSeek's R2 model for a while. So from your perspective, what should be the next breakthrough for a reasoning model?
At the end of the day, people's biggest problem with reasoning model is it just talks too much. It's yeah, I always ask people like, why don't you love Elon more? Right? Like Grok is a great model, but it's just too verbose. So yeah, I think DeepSeek people definitely did a great job balancing intelligence with how long the reasoning takes. I've also heard anecdotal feedback about how like people compare GPT-5 versus O3, saying that O3 is just a model that talks less and may be better for certain use cases. So yeah, I think if there's any breakthrough for R2, it may come in the form of very efficient reasoning that a lot of people are asking for. I also think model development these days look more and more like a heavy industrial process, like fabs, where like you're making a chip. And for R1, like the first breakthrough was the model arc is different. You're changing the algorithm, so there's a big step function, right? Like shocked the stock market, and I lost a bunch of money that day. I'm sure everyone else lost a bunch of money that day as well. But now, if we're saying like, hey, like for example, DeepSeek people published the NSA paper or the fancy new attention mechanism and whatnot, right? But then this just reminds me of Intel's like TikTok back then, where there's like process node improvement, design improvement, process node improvement, design improvement. I feel like the first process node improvement was like DeepSeek V3.1, where you had the MLA and all the fancy stuff, but then the model didn't get much smarter. Then you got the reasoning process jump, and then like both happened, and then wow, it's like a huge improvement, right?
Yeah.
I think the next process node improvement with like all the new model architecture stuff, that's gonna probably take a while. And then combined with like more efficient reasoning or whatnot, maybe that's when they're ready to shock the world again and make me lose a bunch of money. Who knows?
Well, that's all I had for Benny today. But we would like to have you again for our fireside chat and have more discussions. If you guys have questions or if you have topics that you would like us to discuss in the next fireside chat, please make sure to add that in the comments below.
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, everyone.